guys, welcome back to Sacred Vedic Astrology. My name is Samantha and I'm so blessed and truly so grateful to be a professional Vedic sidereal astrologer. So today we have a really important topic to discuss in connection to astrology. It's more of a philosophical musing. You guys know I got that Jupiter Hamsa yoga, but it really does connect to astrology. All right, so what we're going to discuss today is the importance of understanding the divine order that exists in our life, but also in astrology, right? There's this sort of order of the way that certain experiences are happening, certain cycles, certain seasons, even if in the moment it feels really confusing, it feels very difficult. There's always this understanding that comes after a certain experience, after a certain dasha time period, after a certain really heavy transit, for example, Sadi Sati, Saturn return, anything of that nature, where we come out of it and we can realize and reflect and introspect on the fact that all had to happen for a reason. All right, so let's get into this today. If we understand that nature works in seasons and cycles, we can take that and also apply that to astrology, right? So, for example, we're in the winter time and we can see this external reflection of winter. Things aren't as bright, things aren't as vibrant. And during the winter time, people also feel this internal reflection of the external reality, right? So a lot of times when it's winter, people feel more introspective, they feel more withdrawn, they feel more in their own energy. And that's this internal reflection of the external reality that is being reflected through nature. Then it shifts into the next season and the next season, and then it comes to summer and people are like, I want to be out, I want to be experiencing life, I want to be social. There's this shifting of the seasons that is going to reflect how we feel internally. All right, so similarly to that, astrology is happening in the external. Even though we can't necessarily see it, the shifting of the seasons, we can see that. We can see it in the trees, we can see it in the weather and the patterns of weather. So we have more of this like external grasp on what's happening through seasons. Just visualize like up in the ethers, up in the heavens, whatever you want to see it as, the stars. There's these external events that are getting triggered through transits, dasha time periods, and we start feeling that internal reflection of, okay, this is happening externally, now I feel this internally, right? So there's this quote that is as above, so below. I'm not exactly sure, to be quite honest, the root of that quote. I just see that quote as a sense of what's going on above, what's going on out there in the heavens, in the ether, is always going to get reflected into our internal reality, right? So if some sort of astrological transit is occurring, when the eclipses happen, that's that above energy as above, and then below, down in the physical plane of reality, the physical plane of existence, we start feeling that eclipse energy and everyone starts freaking out and everyone starts acting crazy and people have this confusing, chaotic sense about them during the eclipse time period because they're feeling that external reality start getting reflected in the internal. So this is so important because this is really how astrology is working essentially, right? We're having this external experience, we're having these external transits, we're having this external dasha time period, and then we're feeling all the effects internally. That's really important to understand from a more like philosophical concept of how astrology is working. Is it's activating these different cycles, these different seasons within our experience. So something gets triggered, a transit occurs, let's say, for example, Jupiter starts transiting someone's 11th house, that's this external trigger of a transit. Then someone starts feeling the internal effects, right? As above, so below. Whatever is externally getting reflected is going to be internally reflected, however we want to view that. Someone starts feeling that Jupiter 11th house transit, right? Then someone is like, I want to go network. I want to go meet new people. I want to make new friendships. I want to connect with people because they're having that internal reflection of the external experience, right? For example, Jupiter transited my 11th house about 2 years ago at this point, and when that like Jupiter 11th house transit got active, I met so many new people. I met so many business connections, business partnerships, like so many amazing people in that Jupiter 11th house transit. And it was honestly one of the best transits of my life. I got like a windfall of money because my 11th house happens to get disposited by my second house of finances. And the 11th house is also like large gains, large financial sums of money. So I was thriving during my Jupiter 11th house transit, let me tell you. All right, and then Jupiter starts shifting out of that 11th house into my 12th house this past year, which if you guys are Gemini Lagna or Gemini Ascendant, shout out. And we have this Jupiter 12th house transit that shifts the energy. So all of a sudden it's like more about meditation. And I actually went back to my meditation center that I used to go to 6 years ago, right? The second that Jupiter 12th house transit gets activated, all of a sudden my internal reality is, wait, I actually miss my like meditation groups. I miss my meditation center. I go back to it. So it's like that. It's like that. There's some sort of external activation of a transit, Jupiter in the 11th. Then we get this internal reflection of that. Jupiter's in the 11th. I feel like I want to go out. I want to meet people. I want to network. I want to connect with people. I want to have more of this financial abundance. And all of that did happen in my Jupiter 11th house transit. All of it happened, okay? And then it shifts out of the 11th into the 12th. That's that external experience. The internal experience is, oh, I feel very inclined towards moksha, towards spirituality. That's the 12th house. I want to go back to my meditation center. I want to get back into my daily meditation. That's the 12th house of meditation. I start having these wild dreams, right? 12th house is the house of dreams and sleep state. So it just happens like that. It's an external trigger of a transit, and then we start feeling it reflected in our internal reality. All right, so that is really how astrology works, and that's why it's so important to understand like the cyclical patterns that are occurring, right? Because we don't just feel something for no reason, right? When you start understanding that there's this divine order of the universe, there's this divine order of reality, there's this divine order of astrology, you start to understand that everything is happening for a higher reason and a higher purpose, and it makes sense later on. All right, so let's take this as well to more difficult time periods and more difficult transits. Similarly to, let's say, Jupiter's transiting the 11th, that's a pretty positive transit unless someone has two malefics in their 11th house, unless, someone's 11th house is really poorly aspected. For the most part, I feel like a Jupiter 11th house transit is really positive. It's one of my personal favorite transits. So that's happening. That's a more positive transit. Someone can feel good during that time period because of that 11th house Jupiter activation, right? The 11th house is a positive house in astrology. Okay, so now let's take it to someone is going through a Rahu Dasha. This happened to me, by the way. Speaking from personal experience, someone starts going through a Rahu Dasha, and then Sati Sati starts happening, right? Saturn is transiting the sign before the moon, and then, the sign of the moon, and then the sign after the moon. So it's like this activation of Saturn is all around us during that Sati Sati time period. Okay, so someone's running a Rahu Dasha, then they enter Sati Sati. This did happen to me, guys. Let me know if you want a more in-depth video on this experience. Okay, so running a Rahu Dasha, Sati Sati gets triggered. Now someone is going through a lot of difficulty in their life, right? So this external activation of the transit, Saturn's now over the moon. Someone's also in a Rahu Dasha. Maybe Rahu's also transiting a bad house. Then a lot of difficulty starts getting reflected into the internal experience because the external activation is more quote unquote negative, maybe more intense, maybe more heavy, a lot more stress, a lot more to deal with, okay? So then the internal reality becomes more heavy, more difficult because of that activation of the transits and the dasha time period. Again, as above, so below. What's going on externally is getting reflected in our internal experience, our internal reality. right? So it's pretty hard to be going through Sati Sati and a Rahu Dasha and to be like skipping through the streets and screaming from the rooftops, oh my God, I'm so happy, life is so good. During Sati Sati and a Rahu Dasha, it's more so this really intense, tumultuous experience. It's really difficult. It leads a lot of people to spirituality, to meditation, to healing modalities, because it is so difficult. And that is a very difficult time period. And we don't want to ever like use astrology to be overly positive about things either. We want to really understand like when time periods are going to be more difficult, because I find that to be a lot more useful than trying to have this false positivity or false optimism when someone is actually going to be running a really difficult time period, right? So when I was running my Rahu Dasha and then I start going through Sati Sati, really intense. And if I went to an astrologer at that time period, they would have explained, a Vedic astrologer, they would have explained my experience, and I would have found a lot of validation within that of, wow, you're right, this has been a really intense time period. So astrology also brings us validation of our life experience, validation of the cycles, validation of the seasons that we're going through. Right. So again, speaking from personal experience, which I like to bring in because I find astrology to be so accurate when we use our own experiences within transits, our own experiences within Dasha time periods to understand them. I'm in a Rahu Dasha, then I start going through Sati Sati, and it's just like my whole world is so just wild and left and right. Nothing's working. Nothing is flowing. It was this very blocked time period. Everything was out of whack. Everything was out of flow, right? But the truth is, I look back on that Sati Sati and Rahu Dasha time period at the same time. And I look back and it's actually one of the best things that ever happened to me, was going through that really intense astrological energy at the same time, because it propelled so much of my growth. It propelled so much of this wisdom that I gained from Sati Sati and Rahu Dasha happening at the same time. I cut out so many things from my life. I stopped drinking, I stopped partying, I got really serious about my health and serious about my spirituality, and I started a business, and all these really amazing things actually came out of the most difficult astrological time period I ever went through. And don't kid yourself, like it's not easy when you're going through difficult transits, it's not easy when you're going through really difficult astrological experiences. And in the moment, you feel like, oh, maybe it's just going to be like this forever, right? Maybe it's just always going to be this intense. Maybe it's always going to be this up and down. Maybe it's going to always be this tumultuous. But what you realize is that everything is cyclical, right? So then when I started coming out of Saturn being right on my moon, and I start having some like good Jupiterian influence, and then I go into a Rahu Venus as opposed to a Rahu Saturn Dasha, things start really lightening up, and my life starts getting really good actually after that Sati Sati Rahu Dasha. And now, after going through the Sati Sati experience, Rahu Dasha, dual combo at the same time, I feel so much peace. I feel so much happiness in my life because I went through that really tumultuous experience so young. And I'm like, you know what? Been there, done that, right? We've gone through all of that stuff. So it really does happen as it needs to happen, which is really important as well, too, to understand. Like when we're running difficult transits, or we're running difficult astrological time periods, we can look back later on and see that it most likely happened to propel us into growth and change and healing and transformation and to get us to a better place, right? And maybe that's an overly optimistic perspective. Maybe some things happen. Sometimes suffering is just suffering and it's not always so profound. That's true as well too. We can hold like these different philosophical viewpoints about like, is suffering always helpful? And no, it's not always helpful. It's not always useful. But a lot of times it will bring us a lot of wisdom and will help us grow if we can take those lessons and integrate them in a more positive way. All right, so we go through these seasons, we go through these cycles, we go through these time periods astrologically, and then it will lead us to the next cycle, the next season, the next time period, the next experience, right? So for example, we go through the Rahu Dasha, and then after the Rahu Dasha, the Jupiter Dasha gets activated. So it's this really cool divine order of the universe where the universe like throws us a Rahu Dasha. Okay, the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows, the obsessions, the addictions, the craziness, the whirlwind experience, right? And then we also get thrown that Jupiter Dasha right after, which is like relief, which is spirituality, which is wisdom, which is happiness, which is gurus and guides and teachers, right? So it's this cool like cyclical energy and cyclical pattern in that way where it's not just happening for no reason, it's happening to propel us into the next cycle, the next season, right? If we think about, transits and how transits are going through different houses, we can even take this to a place of like, for example, Jupiter transiting the second house can be a time in which we're expanding our speech, we're expanding what we're learning, we're expanding our voice, we're expanding our finances, and then it shifts into the next house, the third house. Okay, now maybe we're taking what we learned in that Jupiter second house transit. Maybe we took some sort of courses, education in the Jupiter second house. Now we take it into the third house, or maybe we're on social media and we're expressing and we're communicating on these like different outlets that the third house can connect to, right? So it's like cyclical in that way, cyclical in that regard. Another example would be like, okay, Jupiter transits our 10th house. We expand our career, we get more out there in our work, maybe we put ourselves more out there on the internet, and then Jupiter starts transiting the 11th and we network, we want to meet people to expand that Jupiter 10th house transit that just occurred. Now we want to go network and meet people based on the expansion that happened from the Jupiter 10th house transit. So it's cyclical, it's this cyclical pattern. It's not just random. It's not just, oh, Jupiter is now transiting the 11th house for no reason. There's a divine order to why it is occurring in that way, right? Jupiter transits the 6th. Maybe we get into the best shape of our life. We get really healthy. We get into fitness. And then Jupiter starts transiting our 7th. And then we meet someone and, that Jupiter 7th house activates. Oh, I'm so glad that I got into good shape before Jupiter starts transiting the 7th house, right? It's a pattern. It is a cyclical occurrence within astrology, right? We can't study astrology and not believe in cycles and not believe in seasons and not believe in patterns, because that is what astrology is. It's a study of cycles. It's a study of these patterns that we can observe and understand how it's going to manifest into someone's reality, into someone's life. All right. So this is really important in doing any sort of astrological practice, is knowing that everything is cyclical. Everything is always shifting, right? One of my favorite quotes is, the only thing constant is change. And that is very true. If you're in these heavy Saturn time periods, that might not feel true, because really heavy Saturn time periods feel like things are stagnant, things are very much the same, things can feel very heavy, kind of burdensome. But for the most part, things are always shifting, things are always moving, things are always flowing, right? So the beauty of astrology is knowing that when you're going through a certain experience, yes, you're going through it. Yes, you have to live it. Yes, you have to find ways to get through it. But on the other side of that, there's going to be something really amazing to look forward to, right? For example, you're going through the Rahu Dasha. Maybe you're coming to the end of it. Oh my God, the Jupiter Dasha is coming in a couple years. That's something really exciting to look forward to. And best believe everything is going to shift when it goes into that Jupiter Dasha, right? Someone's going through a Jupiter 12th house transit. Me right now. It's very internal. It's very introspective. It's very spiritual. It's very much about moksha, spiritual liberation. And then it's going to transit to the first house after that Jupiter 12th house transit. Oh my God, I'm out there in the world. Oh my God, I'm going to be seen. It's that shifting of energy, shifting of cycles, shifting of patterns, shifting of seasons, okay? So it's really this acceptance that we can gain from astrology of, oh, I'm going through this experience, but it's not going to be like this forever. And I find that to be the most powerful aspect of astrology, not even in a predictive way of when is this going to happen, when exactly is this going to happen, more so in a way of knowing that when you get to new transits, new time periods, new windows, things can really open up in these new areas of life. So Jupiter 10th house transit, again, just speaking from personal experience to give you guys more of a personal understanding of these transits, when Jupiter transited my 10th house, that was a time period where my career was really starting to take off and things were really good and things were really positive, and I had some amazing business connections at that time. Jupiter was expanding my 10th house, and that was something really exciting and really positive, right? And that's just something that someone can look forward to in their transit, something to understand, when it comes to this time period, things are going to shift, things are going to get better, things are really going to open up, right? So it's really important. And what I love about astrology as a practice is we can go through certain things at certain time periods and be so in it and feel it so deeply and be so connected to it, and we're just in it and we're in this experience, and then it just shifts and we're just out of it and we look back and we're like, I don't even know what that was all about. And you feel that shift when you feel the transits and the dasha sequences shift as well too. And the reason I find astrology so powerful as a healing modality and a healing tool is I've spoken about this before. I think that Western psychology and Western medicine is so useful and so amazing in so many regards. And I don't ever want this to be misconstrued as me being against Western healing modalities, because I'm not. I know a lot of people that have benefited so much from psychology, therapy, etc. I think it's great. I love it. However, I find that if someone doesn't understand the astrological experiences that are occurring, it's hard to get that full understanding of why it's happening and when it's going to shift. So let's have these two examples, right? One example is going through Sati Sati, going through a Rahu Dasha, and you go to a psychologist and you talk to them about your experience, and you're talking about it and you're talking about it and you're talking about it and you're talking about it, right? And you just feel like things aren't really shifting or moving within that experience. Okay, so that's one example, and that did happen to me during my Sati Sati Rahu Dasha. Okay, second example, you're going through Sati Sati, you're going through a Rahu Dasha, you go to a Vedic astrologer. A Vedic astrologer tells you this is what you're experiencing. You're going to experience this for the next couple of years. Here's how to work with it. Here's how to work through it. However, you're also going to be out of that in about 2 to 3 years. To me, that second form of healing or that second form of understanding your experience is a lot more useful and a lot more helpful in actually understanding why it's happening and when it's going to shift. Because the thing is, until the astrological climate shifts, someone is going to feel those heavy transits. Until Sati Sati lightens up, someone is going to feel Sati Sati, right? Until someone comes out of a Rahu Dasha, they're going to feel Rahu. And it's really helpful and really beneficial to understand not only why they're experiencing something, but how long they're experiencing something. That is the beauty of astrology, is you're going through this experience, but here's when it's going to change. Here's when it's going to shift. Just try to get through these next couple of years, this next year-long transit, whatever it is, understand the energy, and then also know that it's going to change. That is the power of astrology, is that hopefulness, and not a false sense of hopefulness, but that true hope we get in knowing things are going to shift at this time period based on the transits and the dasha sequence. Really powerful. Similarly to nature, similarly to the way that nature is working around us, astrology is a study of cycles, seasons, and patterns. All right. And having that knowledge of when things are occurring, how long they're occurring, how long we can expect to have either a really good transit or a really negative transit brings so much peace, so much clarity into our life experience. For example, if someone has all this negative malefic influence in their 7th house, it's a time period where you might tell someone, this isn't the time to get married. This is the time to focus on your career and focus on yourself, because that 7th house is having a lot of malefic influence into it, right? And that can bring someone so much peace and so much clarity of, okay, this isn't the time for that. Let me focus my energy here. Another example, if someone has a bunch of energy, maybe a bunch of benefic influence onto their 12th house, oh, this is a great time to meditate. This is a great time to travel. This is a great time to learn spirituality. And they might feel that, but they just get that validation of that experience through the transits and through the dasha time period. All right, so it's really powerful. And it's not to say that like you just go to a Vedic astrologer and they're going to fix your issues. That's not what I'm trying to say. But when you go to Vedic astrologers or you study Vedic astrology or you are a Vedic astrologer yourself, you understand the cycles, you understand why certain things are happening and also when it is going to shift. It gives you a lot of this like calmness about life that I like honestly couldn't trade for the world. Like studying Vedic astrology, the only way I know how to explain it is I feel like while everyone else freaks out about certain things that are going on, certain events in the world, certain feelings, certain emotions, I feel like I always have this calmness within it because I understand the astrology of it and I understand, oh, it's just an eclipse time period. It's going to pass in a few months. Oh, it's just a full moon in this, it's going to pass at this time period. Oh, it's just this collective transit. Oh, it's just Venus with Rahu, right? Like the only way I know how to put it into words is I just understand the cycles and the seasons that are going on within the world. So I don't really have this like freak out feeling about much, to be honest. Maybe that's me going through Sati Sati so young. Maybe that's me going through Rahu Dasha so young. I'm like, been there, done that. But I just have this like calmness in life where I just really understand everything is cyclical. Everything is a pattern, right? And it brings me so much peace and clarity. And it also allows me to help others and guide others from like a grounded, calm sort of place, right? Because I understand what's going on. I can see what's going on. I see the patterns. I see the cycles through astrology. And astrology is really just the study of the cycles that we're experiencing in life. Astrology has been around, oh my goodness, since, the ancient times. Everyone used to use astrology. It was very well respected. The kings would go to astrologers before they made any sort of major decision. This sort of westernized modern view that we have of astrology is really nothing like what astrology is actually about. Astrology is here to help us understand time periods that are great for certain things and when it might not be the best time for something through the cycles and the seasons that are happening astrologically. Right, I saw this video recently of a famous singer. I think her name is like Dua Lipa. I'm really bad with pop culture. To be honest, like I really don't care much about pop culture, but there was this interview of her and she said, I don't have a therapist, but I have an astrologer. Guys, that is one of our most famous singer-songwriters of our time period and our generation, and she is telling you guys that she doesn't have a therapist, she has an astrologer. I'm telling y'all. Celebrities use astrologers, politicians use astrologers. All of the people that are in higher up places in society use astrologers. They just don't tell you about it. They just don't talk about it. So astrology is really one of the most powerful tools that we have and have always had embedded into our culture and into our society. All right, and it's really just this beautiful study of cycles and patterns and seasons, and what you'll find is the more you study astrology, the more peace you get, the more acceptance you get, and you also just get this ability to move through the good and the bad astrologically with a lot more grace and a lot more ease. So really important to understand the importance of cycles, seasons, these cyclical experiences, and how there is a divine order to it all through astrology. All right, let me know what you guys thought about this musing down below. Do you guys like these videos where I just talk about philosophical ideas and how it connects to astrology and my viewpoints of astrology and why I got into astrology? Maybe I'll do a more in-depth video on that as well too. But let me know if you guys enjoy this sort of content or if you prefer the birth chart analysis videos. I love doing both, so I'm really open, and I'm always open for suggestions as well too. I always want to create content that you guys really enjoy. All right, so I hope you guys have such a beautiful, blessed day. This was so fun for me to film because you guys know I got that Jupiter in Sagittarius, baby. I could talk about philosophical musings all day. All right, sending all the love. We'll talk soon. Bye, guys.